Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God, back with you with the next video in my series reading Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Oliver Twist as read by Lord Naren White. Although Mr. Losberne received with many wry faces a proposal involving a delay of 5 whole days, he was fain to admit that no better course occurred to him just then, and as both Rose and Miss Maylie sided very strongly with Mr. Brownlow, the gentleman's proposition was carried unanimously. "I should like," he said, "to call in the aid of my friend Grimwig. He is a strange creature, but a shrewd one, and might prove of material assistance to us. I should say that he was bred a lawyer, and quitted the bar in disgust because he had only one brief and a motion, of course, in 20 years, though whether that is recommendation or not, you must determine for yourselves." "I have no objection to your calling in your friend, if I may call in mine," said the doctor. "We must put it to vote," replied Mr. Brownlow. "Who may he be?" "That lady's son, and this young lady's very old friend," said the doctor, motioning towards Mrs. Maylie, and concluding with an expressive glance at her niece. Rose blushed deeply, but she did not make any audible objection to this motion. Possibly she felt in a hopeless minority, and Harry Maylie and Mr. Grimwig were accordingly added to the committee. "We stay in town, of course," said Mrs. Maylie, "while there remains the slightest prospect of prosecuting this inquiry with a chance of success. I will spare neither trouble nor expense in behalf of the object in which we are all so deeply interested, and I am content to remain here, if it be for 12 months, so long as you assure me that any hope remains." "Good," rejoined Mr. Brownlow, "and as I see on the faces about me a disposition to inquire how it happened that I was not in the way to corroborate Oliver's tale, and had so suddenly left the kingdom, let me stipulate that I shall be asked no questions until such time as I may deem it expedient to forestall them by telling my own story. Believe me, I make this request with good reason, for I might otherwise excite hopes destined never to be realized, and only increase difficulties and disappointments already quite numerous enough. Come, supper has been announced, and young Oliver, who is all alone in the next room, will have begun to think by this time that we have wearied of his company and entered into some dark conspiracy to thrust him forth upon the world." With these words the old gentleman gave his hand to Mrs. Maylie, and escorted her into the supper room. Mr. Losberne followed, leading Rose, and the council was, for the present, effectually broken up. Chapter 42. An old acquaintance of Oliver's, exhibiting decided marks of genius, becomes a public character in the metropolis. Upon the night when Nancy, having lulled Mr. Sikes to sleep, hurried on her self-imposed mission to Rose Maylie, there advanced towards London by the Great North Road two persons upon whom it is expedient that this history should bestow some attention. They were a man and a woman, or perhaps they would be better described as a male and female, for the former was one of those long-limbed, knock-kneed, shambling, bony people, to whom it is difficult to assign any precise age, looking as they do when they are yet boys, like undergrown men, and when they are almost men, like overgrown boys. The woman was young, but of a robust and hardy make, and she need have been to bear the weight of the heavy bundle which was strapped to her back. Her companion was not encumbered with much luggage, as there merely dangled from a stick which she carried over his shoulder a small parcel wrapped in a common handkerchief, and apparently light enough. The circumstance, added to the length of his legs, which were of unusual extent, enabled him with much ease to keep some half-dozen paces in advance of his companion, to whom he occasionally turned with an impatient jerk of the head, as if reproaching her tardiness and urging her to greater exertion. Thus they had toiled along the dusty road, taking little heed of any object within sight, save when they stepped aside to allow a wider passage for the mail coaches, which were whirling out of town, until they passed through Highgate Archway, when the foremost traveller stopped and called impatiently to his companion. "Come on, can't you? What a lazy bone you are, Charlotte. It's a heavy load, I can tell you, said the female, coming up, almost breathless with fatigue. Heavy? What are you talking about? What are you made for? Rejoined the male traveller, changing his own little bundle as he spoke to the other shoulder. Oh, there you are, resting again. Well, if you ain't enough to tire anybody's patience out, I don't know what it is. Is it much further? Asked the woman, resting herself against a bank and looking up with the perspiration streaming from her face. Much farther. You're as good as there, said the long-legged tramper, pointing out before him. Look there, those are the lights of London. They're a good 2 mile off at least, said the woman despondingly. Never mind, whether they're 2 mile off or 20, said Noah Claypool, for he it was. But get up and come on, or I'll kick you, and so I give you notice. As Noah's red nose grew redder with anger, and as he crossed the road while speaking, as it is fully prepared to put his threat into execution, the woman rose without any further remark and trudged onward by his side. Where do you mean to stop for the night, Noah? She asked, after they had walked a few hundred yards. How should I know? Replied Noah, whose temper had been considerably impaired by walking. Near, I hope, said Charlotte. No, not near, replied Mr. Claypool. There, not near, so don't think it. Why not? When I tell you that I don't mean to do a thing, that's enough, without any why or because either, replied Mr. Claypool with dignity. Well, you needn't be so cross, said his companion. A pretty thing it would be, wouldn't it, to go and stop at the very first public house outside the town, so that Sowerberry, if he come up after us, might poke in his old nose, and have us taken back in a cart with handcuffs on, said Mr. Claypool in a jeering tone. No, I shall go and lose myself among the narrowest streets I can find, and not stop till we come to the very out-of-the-wayest home I can set eyes on. God, you may thanks your stars I've got ahead, for if we hadn't gone at first the wrong road o' purpose, and come back across country, you'd have been locked up hard and fast a week ago, my lady, and serve you right for being a fool. I know I ain't as cunning as you are, replied Charlotte, but don't put all the blame on me, and say I should have been locked up. You would have been if I had been anyway. You took the money from the till, you know you're dead, said Mr. Claypool. I took it for you, Noah dear, rejoined Charlotte. Did I keep it? Asked Mr. Claypool. No, you trusted in me, and let me carry it like a dear, and so you are, said the lady, chucking him under the chin, and drawing her arm through his. This was indeed the case, but as it was not Mr. Claypool's habit to repose a blind and foolish confidence in anybody, it should be observed in justice to that gentleman that he had trusted Charlotte to his extent in order that, if they were pursued, the money might be found on her, which would leave him an opportunity of asserting his innocence of any theft, and would greatly facilitate his chances of escape. Of course, he entered at this juncture into no explanation of his motives, and they walked on very lovingly together. In pursuance of this cautious plan, Mr. Claypool went on without halting until he arrived at the Angel of Islington, where he wisely judged from the crowd of passengers and number of vehicles that London began in earnest. Just pausing to observe which appeared the most crowded streets and consequently the most to be avoided, he crossed into St. John's Road and was soon deep in the obscurity of the intricate and dirty ways which, lying between Gray's Inn Lane and Smithfield, render the part of the town one the lowest and worst that improvement has left in the midst of London. Through these streets Noah Claypool walked, dragging Charlotte after him, now stepping into the kennel to embrace at a glance the whole external character of some small public house, now jogging on again, as some fancied appearance induced him to believe it too public for his purpose. At length he stopped in front of one, more humble in appearance and more dirty than any he had yet seen. Having crossed over and surveyed it from the opposite pavement, graciously announced his intention of putting up there for the night. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.